Hello everyone, Vangeris here, and today I'll be taking you through Skyrim while talking about anything and everything on our way to becoming an acolyte of the Daedra. As previously mentioned in this series, we'll be tackling different parts of Skyrim's questlines in separate videos. Here's a reference for when we're tackling what. One point I need to make clear is that the first 10 videos in this series are focusing on the walkthrough aspect, where I show you the game while throwing out opinions and criticisms as we go. These sections focus on showing and explaining the content more so than critiquing every aspect of it. We'll dive into a heavy analysis of the game in the final video, so if you're expecting more analysis during the walkthrough section, you may find it lacking. That's intentional, so I ask that you be patient while I work on the final part of this series. It's looking to be a monster of a video, as I plan to take my previous commentary analysis sections and kick it up a notch with just about everything found in this game, especially on the story side, as that is where the bulk of Skyrim's content comes from. But let's get back on track. As I alluded to earlier, today we'll be tackling the Daedric quests and the rewards we'll receive. Timestamps for each quest can be found in the description, as well as my critical analysis playlist where you can find the rest of the Skyrim series once they're all uploaded, along with my other analytical content. Another note with this video is I'm not creating a fresh character for this, instead returning to magical Maculion, since magic is overpowered and that's helpful. This will mark the next stage of this series where I'm using experienced characters instead of fresh ones. Finally, feel free to leave a comment with your stories, opinions, and criticisms as this goes on. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this one way or another. It helps me iron out the kinks in future videos by letting me know if I get something wrong, word things poorly, or just suck and need to improve. I welcome the comments and criticisms. Now let's dive into serving our Daedric overlords. We'll be doing each of the Daedric quests in alphabetical order, beginning with Azura. To begin this quest, we'll need to reach the Shrine of Azura in Winterhold atop one of the mountains. When we arrive, we'll meet Arania Ionith, or AI as I'll call her, who says Azura has seen our coming and that it was not curiosity, but fate that led us here. We'll ask what she means, and she says Azura granted her the gift of foresight, and she had a vision of us walking to this altar long before we were born. She'll go on to say we have been chosen as Azura's champion, adding that it will all unfold as she has predicted. We'll accept our newfound championness and ask what Azura needs. We'll be pointed to a fortress endangered by water, yet untouched by it. Inside, we will find an elven mage who can turn the brightest star as black as night. AI admits this is cryptic, but Azura's signs are never wrong. Then she says the fortress may refer to Winterhold, and we should ask if they know of an elven enchanter. Before we go, we'll get down with the lore and learn Azura is the goddess of dawn and dusk. She sees into the twilight of the future and guides her followers through it. Then we can ask where this shrine came from, and we learn the Dunmer built it after they fled from Morrowind after Vvardenfell erupted almost 200 years ago. Those who were faithful to Azura were given a vision that led them away from the island before the eruption. This shrine is their thanks to Azura, that none will forget that she watches over us all. We'll then ask if she's all alone here, and learn she is. There were others, but Azura's visions tested their faith, with many not wanting to know their own future, so they left one by one. AI refused to abandon the shrine as the visions are a gift that warns her of tragedy, war, and death before it happens. She won't leave that guidance. Now it's time to find an elven enchanter. Since we have college knowledge, we'll know this refers to Nelacar in the Inn of Winterhold. We'll mention looking for an elven mage who studies stars, and he asks who sent us, saying he made an arrangement with the college that there would be no more questions. We'll have options to convince him to talk, and when we're honest about Azura sending us, he doesn't believe us. Then we'll offer to pay him, and he'll ask what we know of soul gems. We'll say they're for enchanting, and Nelacar agrees, but says they're always consumed, as they are frail, except for one soul gem, Azura's star. This is a Daedric artifact that allows any number of souls to pass through it. Nelacar recalls some of us wanted to find out how it could do this, and mentions working under Malyn Varen then, but if he only knew what Malyn was really planning. We'll ask what he did, and learn Malyn wanted to alter the star, as he was dying of disease, and he thought he could store his soul inside it to become immortal. It drove him mad, and students started dying. Eventually, the college exiled him, and he took a few loyal disciples to Ilinalta's Deep and vanished. Nelacar will tell us not to bring it back to Azura, saying the Daedra are evil, as they are the reason Malyn went insane. Then we'll ask some questions, starting by asking how the star works. It's a soul gem, only it never gets depleted and only stores white souls, those which belong to lesser creatures. Azura's magic won't allow black souls to enter it. Nelacar will mention that Malyn, as a mortal, had a black soul, and so part of his work was breaking past Azura's rules. He was apparently close before he lost his mind. We'll then ask how the Daedra drove Malin insane, with Nelacar saying Azura is no ordinary Daedra. She commands an entire realm inside of Oblivion. The more Malin worked on the star, the more she was able to toy with him. It started slowly, with Malin seeing things that weren't there. Then he would yell at students over words they hadn't said. One day Nelacar walked in to find Malin had killed a student, and in a horrific moment of inspiration, he started using her soul for his work. We'll mention that it sounds like Malin got what was coming to him, and Nelacar says the college would agree, but asks that we consider the innocent lives cut short just so Azura could have revenge. He says we're nothing but pawns to the Daedra to be moved around, praised, and punished as they see fit. Now we'll head to Ilinalta's Deep in Falkreath. It's a stone structure that sank into the lake, and we'll have to find the star. We'll cut through several necromancers and their skelebros before spamming an arch-necromancer to death. Then we'll head deeper into the ruin and fight our way to a final room with a broken Azura's star. It's in front of Malin's skeleton, which sets a good image for what Daedric lords can and will do to you. From here, we can choose to bring the star to AI or Nel, with the choice dictating whether we gain a star that can hold white souls, AI, or black souls, Nel. I'll be showing both options, but we'll continue with AI for now. We'll bring the black star to her at the shrine, and we'll give it to her. She'll commune with Azura, and then tells us to place our hands on the altar, as Azura wishes to communicate directly with us. We'll do so, and hear Azura, saying we followed her guidance and rescued her star from Malin, but his soul still resides within, protected by his enchantments. Until he is purged, the artifact is useless to us. We'll ask of a way to cleanse it, and Azura says the star will eventually fade back into her realm in Oblivion, but she doubts we have the 100 or so years it would take to wait that out. Then she says one option remains. She will send us inside the star to banish Malin's soul there. We'll agree and go inside the star and meet Malin. He acts like his disciples sent us, as he was getting hungry, but notices we're different. We say he can't escape his fate, and he chastises us for challenging him, as he has conquered mortality itself while spitting in the eyes of the Daedric lords. Then we'll fight him. He's a mage, and is accompanied by powerful Dremora mages, but we're the Archmage, so we'll get him bent, and Azura will pull us out of the star. She'll say her star has been restored, and Malin's soul has been consigned to Oblivion, mentioning we've done well. Then we are gifted Azura's star, with our Daedric mistress mentioning she'll be guarding over the threads of our fate. Then we'll talk to AI. She says that while we were inside the star, Azura gave AI her last vision. She says she's never been without Azura's foresight since escaping Morrowind, and doesn't know what to do. She says if we need her, she'd be honored to accompany us, as it would give her a purpose. We'll press her on the vision's ending, and she was told by Azura that her part was over, and her fate had moved beyond the twilight, and she's now on her own. She will remain to tend to the shrine, but she mentions this is the first time she feels alone. On that happy note, we'll reload a save and return the star to Nel, since black souls are more powerful than white ones, which means the black star will be more useful than Azura's star. He'll say this could be his chance to make things right and finish Malin's work the way they meant to before his madness. This would involve cutting the star off from Azura, only allowing black souls to enter it. He'll examine the star, saying Malin grew desperate as the fissures and cracks on the star indicate. Then Nel says Malin did it and trapped himself in the star, but it's falling apart, and it needs more and more souls to sustain itself. Nel says he can't fix the star with the piece of Malin's soul inside, so we'll go inside and kill him like before. We'll get some dialogue before we go in, asking what's to keep us from ending up like Malin. Nel says his soul is beyond hope because his body is dead, but Nel will be keeping us just slightly alive on this end. Then he mentions that if we die inside the star, our soul will be disrupted and there's nothing anyone can do for us. With that terrifying concept, we'll purge the star of the crazies. When we return, Nel says we've done it, and Malin's soul may finally have some measure of peace, even if it is in non-existence. Nel tells us to keep the star, as he'd like to put this chapter of his life behind him, and we've got our black star, one of several Daedric artifacts we'll collect. But now we'll move on. Next we'll serve Boethiah. We'll begin by hiring a mercenary, the name in person doesn't matter, as you'll see soon. Then we'll head east of Windhelm to find the cult of Boethiah. Talking to the priestess allows us to ask who Boethiah is, the Lord of Plots, Deceiver of Nations, Devourer of Trinimac, Queen of Shadows, Goddess of Destruction, He who destroys and She who erases, and so on. The pronouns are all over the place, but we'll go with she for Boethiah since the priestess uses that most. Moving on, we learn names mean nothing, as she only cares for those who care for themselves, whose hearts are full of purpose and deeds. We'll say we're like that, and the priestess says we need to prove our tongue can wield a lie. We need to find someone, gain their trust, and lead them to the shrine above. We are to instruct them to touch the pillar of sacrifice, and its magic will ensnare them. Then we'll take the ceremonial blade and spill the waters of their heart all over us. If our will is strong enough, Boethiah will stir and appear before us. We'll agree to do it, and the priestess says they will welcome us as one of their own. Now we'll sacrifice our mercenary. Nice knowing you for 10 minutes. We'll get him to interact with the pillar, and he'll be sucked to it, and a force field appears. We'll equip the blade of sacrifice and kill our cattle. Boethiah will possess his body, saying wearing this flesh is distasteful. She says getting her attention is unwise, and asks why we've slain this poor soul. We say it's to gain her favor, and she says that is not some trophy for mortal sport, saying she should slay us for this insolence. We can ask her who she is, and she repeats what we heard earlier. We'll ask if she's a god, and she says she certainly isn't, asking when was the last time we saw evidence of Daedra in the world. Then says she's more powerful, and among the other Daedra, she is most feared. We'll say we didn't mean to offend, and Boethiah says if we were certain, we wouldn't need to apologize. Then she says we have much to learn, but we've proven our will is strong and a heart devoid of pity. She says we aren't entirely useless, and proceeds to speak to all of the cultists. Boethiah says she has need of a warrior, and only the most ruthless, cunning, and agile will do. Then she says the cultists have gathered night after night, sacrificing fools upon her shrine, and sparring aimlessly with each other. She questions which one among us exceeds the rest, and mentions a special task for the one of us who remains. Then it's a free-for-all between the cultists, and we'll take advantage of this by spamming chain lightning until they're all dead. Boethiah will possess the body of the last cultist killed, and she says we've proven our strength of will and tongue's gift of lies. She'll ask us to cast aside our honor and strike with a hidden blade. We'll say honor is a coward's tool, with Boethiah saying that's an astute observation. She says Skyrim is a beautiful and harsh mistress, but her people cling to petty notions of honor. Then she says her previous champion displeases her, and it is time he is replaced. We'll learn Boethiah loathes to utter his name, as one can't erase a thing if it has a name to be remembered. We'll ask what he's done to displease her, and she says he served his purpose for a time, but that time is up. He used her gifts for his own amusement, and the only amusement she tolerates is her own. We'll learn he is found at Knife Point Ridge, where he plays king to bandits and highwaymen. We'll agree to take him out, and Boethiah tells us to kill every member of his band, and to do it as silently and invisibly as we can, for this is not about us. We are her instrument in this, and she wants us not to give him the dignity of defending himself. Once his corpse lays cold upon the ground, and all traces of his followers erased, we are to retrieve her ebony mail, a gift fit only for her true champion. Then we'll head for the kill. Knife Point Ridge is far to the west of Falkreath, and will become the invisible mage assassin elf, which is pretty fun to play as. Even when we're caught, we'll blast the bandits away with our superior brain power. We'll wipe out everyone inside, including the former champion, and loot the ebony mail. It allows us to move quietly while wearing heavy armor, along with opponents that get too close, taking 5 points of poison damage per second. It's neat for sneaking, but the poison cloud is counterintuitive to that, along with poisoning anyone nearby. It's a rather antisocial thing to wear. Once every bandit is slain, we'll equip the ebony mail, and Boethiah tells us we've earned her respect, a feat few manage and live to tell about. She says our name will be written upon the tablet of absolute darkness, which sounds like an edgy middle school kid's Death Note-inspired notebook. Anyway, we are allowed to keep the ebony mail as a token of Boethiah's appreciation to her new champion. Then she says she has things to do, and we may pursue our own goals as we see fit. Then says to remember, as we will it, so it shall be, and we'll move to the next quest. We'll begin Clavicus Vile's quest by heading to Falkreath Township, and the guards will ask if we've seen a dog. We didn't, and they mention the blacksmith is offering a reward for a dog we saw on the road. We'll speak to the blacksmith Laud about the dog. He says he can't afford to chase him down, but could use a loyal beast to keep him company. He'll offer some fresh meat to attract the dog if we are willing to retrieve him. We'll agree, but we need to be convinced, with Laud saying a smart man demands something up front, and he'll agree to pay some gold now and some when he has his dog. Then he gives us the meat and gives it to us raw. We'll head outside of Falkreath and encounter the dog Barbas, who says we're exactly what he's looking for. We'll be surprised he talked, and he mentions how weird that is given flying lizards and two-legged catmen, which is fair. Then he introduces himself and says he has a problem he thinks we can help out. We'll ask what a dog needs help with, and he says he and his master had a falling out. They got into an argument, and it got heated. Barbas was kicked out, and he wants us to help settle the disagreement. We'll poke fun at him being a lost little puppy, and he says it's very funny, before mentioning his master is Clavicus Vile, the Daedric Prince of Wishes. As we can imagine, he's quite important. We'll agree to help, and Barbas says, since his banishment, Vial's been weak and can't manifest very far from one of his shrines. Barbas knows of a cult that worships him at Hamar's Shame, and we should find him there. He says he'll make sure we are rewarded, but asks us not to trust any offer Vial makes. Then we'll follow Barbas. We are forced to follow him, in that we can't wait and then go where he went after he's already arrived. We have to follow him, or he'll stop moving. This is an arbitrary extension of playtime for no discernible reason. We've already seen plenty of quests that let us catch up with NPCs at other locations without having us glued to them, but we gotta follow the doggo. It's not like he's too stupid to point to a position on a map and then we can go there ourselves. This following part just seems ridiculous given the standard of what the game offers most of the time. Anyway, after wandering through the woods and roads, we'll find Hamar's Shame. This area is full of vampires, so we'll have to fight our way to the shrine. After much death, we'll find the shrine and commune with Vial. We mention we have a request, and he says he'll hear it since we already helped him grant one final wish for his worshippers. They were suffering from vampirism, and they begged for a cure. Then we arrived and ended their misery. Then he asks for our heart's desire, and we mention reuniting with Barbas. Vial calls him insufferable, and says he won't oblige our request. Then he dejectedly says he's glad to be rid of him, even if he's trapped in a shrine in the back end of nowhere. Then he mentions there is a way he could earn his place back at his side, but no promises. Vial mentions an incredibly powerful axe that he could have fun with. He says we bring the axe to him and we'll gain his boon. No strings attached or messy surprises, at least not for us. We'll ask for the story of the axe from Barbas, and he calls it one of Vial's little jests. A wizard named Sebastian Lort had a daughter who worshipped Hircine. When she became a werewolf, it drove Sebastian over the edge. He couldn't stand to see his little girl take on the bestial form. He wished for the ability to end his daughter's curse, and Vial gave him the axe. You can piece together the rest. We'll head out to Rimerock Burrow along the northwestern border of Skyrim, and we'll kill Sebastian for the axe. We'll return the axe, and Vial says us retrieving it with Barbas is almost storybook. He says it'd be a shame to give the axe away like that, considering letting us have it if we use it to kill Barbas. We have the option to comply or refuse, beginning by saying we sure would like to keep this axe. Vial says he could absorb the spirit of Barbas as he'd still reunite with him, and he's sure Barbas doesn't want us to have the axe. We'll find Barbas, and he says there's a second option, as the axe isn't the only item Vial has. Barbas offers us the mask of Clavicus Vial if we give Vial the axe back, and Barbas reunites with him. Now we have our options, but Doggy needs to be put down, with him only taking damage from the axe. Once Barbas is dead, Vial says he can reabsorb Barbas and then return to full power without having to listen to the whining. Then he'll mention Barbas coming back in a century or two, but Vial thinks he'll have lots of fun till then. Then he tells us to enjoy the axe and not to worry about Barbas. After all, he should have picked a better friend. Barbas will appear as a statue to complement Clavicus Vial, and will now have the axe. We'll reload a save and refuse to kill Barbas this time. Vial says we're not fun at all, and then mentions the dog reuniting with him restores him to full power. Then Vial is reunited, and Barbas says he'll make Vial see the light, and when they reunite, Vial says it's a shame we wished for something so dull as taking back his mutt. Then he insults our lack of imagination, saying that lack ought to be punished, perhaps by turning us into a worm. Then he relents, and will be given the mask of Clavicus Vial. It boosts price discounts by 20%, adds 10 speechcraft, and increases magical regen by 5%. Also looks fun. But let's move on to the next quest. Now we'll be delving into the realm of Hermaeus Mora. We'll need to reach Septimus Cygnus and his iceberg in the northern sea of Skyrim to begin his quest. You'll remember him from the main questline video way back when. Talking to Sep has us ask what brought him to this remote place. He'll describe the ice entombs the heart, the bane of Kagranak and Dagoth-Ur. He says harnessing it is to know the fundaments, but the Dwemer lockbox hides it from him. Then he mentions an Elder Scroll gives insight deeper than the deep ones, which can open the Dwemer device. We'll ask if Sep has an Elder Scroll, and he says he's seen enough to know their fabric does not possess a scroll. Then we'll ask where the scroll is, and he repeats what we heard during the main questline, so check that video out for context. We'll be aligning with the main quest Elder Knowledge, where we grab the Elder Scroll from the Tower Mazark after entering Blackreach, so we'll be repeating that process. I'm skipping it here since I already showed it in the first video, so apologies if you wanted to see it here. Anyway, we'll do our customary digging for Dwemer delectables until we grab the scroll and return to Septimus as we become a vampire. That won't matter now, but it will come up later. Getting back to Septimus, we'll ask why he's so eager to open the box, and he says it contains the heart and essence of a god. He mentions devoting his life to the Elder Scrolls, but their knowledge is a passing awareness when compared to the mind of divinity. The Dwemer were the last to touch it, and it was thought to have been destroyed by the Vaermina, but Sep's lord told him otherwise. When we ask who the lord is, Sep says it's the Daedric prince of the unknown, Hermaeus Mora. Sep thought there were no secrets left to know until he spoke to Mora. Mora asks a price to work his will. Sep mentions a few murders, some dissent spread, and a plague or two, before saying he can endure for the secrets. In time, Mora brought him to the box, but he won't reveal how to open it, and he calls it maddening, which explains how Sep became the mind he is today. Moving on, we'll give him the inscribed lexicon, and he says the ceiling structure interlocks in the tiniest fractals. Then he mentions Dwemer blood can loose the hooks, but none are alive to bear it. He mentions a panoply of their brethren could form a facsimile, or trick, that the Dwemer didn't anticipate. We'll need the blood of Altmer, Bosmer, Dunmer, Falmer, and Orsimer, as the elves still living provide the key we need. Then Sep will give us an essence extractor to grab the blood of various races in the world. On our way out, we'll meet a wretched abyss we can talk to. This is Hermaeus Mora, who says he is the guardian of the unseen, knower of the unknown, and has been watching us. We appear impressive to him, and will ask what he wants of us. He says Sep renders himself increasingly obsolete the more we help him. He has served Mora well, but his time is nearing its end. Once the Dwemer box is opened, Sep will have exhausted his usefulness. When that time comes, we are to take his place as Mora's emissary. We'll agree to join him, with our choice not impacting the quest progression whatsoever. He says to speak with him after the box is opened, and all shall be revealed. Now we'll need to grab some blood. This can be done by interacting with corpses of high elves, wood elves, dark elves, falmer, and orcs. They don't need to be killed by you, or even be fresh kills, as there are plenty of corpses that will satisfy the quest requirements throughout Skyrim. It's up to the player to decide how to acquire the blood, whether through murder or corpse poking. Because we're going through our evil arc, we'll be killing some NPCs to facilitate our blood collecting. Once we have the juice of life we need, we'll give it to Sep, who says he can almost hear them and feel their life energy. He will make the mixture and open the box. We'll walk inside to find a book before Sep starts floating, saying he can see the world beyond, but it burns his mind. He describes it as marvelous before being turned to dust. Then we'll pick up the Ogma Infinium. Mora is waiting for us when we try to leave. He says that the Ogma contains knowledge of the ages, as revealed by Xarxes, his loyal servant. For hundreds of years, it's been shut away from the world, but Sep was a useful tool to unleash it. He says let us work wonders together before disappearing. When we read the Ogma Infinium, we can choose to pick a pathway of knowledge. The three options mirror the three trees that are also mirrored by the guardian stones of the warrior, mage, and thief. As such, the choice we make affects the red, blue, or green skill sections depending on which we pick. We can gain 5 skills in every tree of the type we choose, making this quest a great choice once you've neared the end of several trees and want that extra boost at the end to completely unlock them, or as a significant boost early on to unlock many beneficial skills at once. In any case, lots of knowledge to be gained. As we're a mage, we'll focus the path of magic, and then we'll get into the next quest. Now we'll go for Hircine's quest. You'll remember him as the werewolf patriarch from the Companions video. We'll start this quest by talking to a prisoner in the Falkreath jail, although you can talk to another NPC before this for extra dialogue, but you'll get the gist of it through this starting point anyway. We'll meet Sinding, who asks if we've come to gawk at the monster. We'll ask why he's imprisoned here, and he bluntly says a little girl is dead because of him. He says it wasn't intentional, as he just lost control. He tried to tell people, but they didn't believe him, then he blames it on a ring. This ring, the Ring of Hircine, was taken by Sinding, and he was told it could let him control his transformations. Perhaps it used to, but he'll never know, and he mentions Hircine didn't care for him taking it and threw a curse upon it. When he put it on, the changes just came on, and he could never guess when. It would be at the worst of times, like with the little girl. We'll ask what transformations these are, and Sinding says there's no point to hide his secret if he's going to die in here, and confirms he's a werewolf. That's why he wanted the ring, as it was said to give men like him control. He may look like a man, but he still feels the animal inside, as strong as ever. We can ask why this made him attack the girl, and he tells his story. He came to Falkreath as they needed help working the mill, and he thought that would be something safe he could do. When he saw the girl, he had a feeling coming, a feeling that he had to hunt. Then he says his human body was limited, and wasn't meant for hunting as it was slow, had no claws, and had weak, mashing teeth for chewing mud. He felt the rage boiling inside him until he transformed, and the act was done. He feels terrible about what happened and what he did. Then he says it would probably be best for everyone if he just went away. We'll then ask who Hircine is, and we'll relearn much of what the companion said. Hircine is the Daedric prince of the hunt, and he revels in the chase. He also gave lycanthropy to mortals, and is a powerful force not to be crossed, as Sinding learned too late. We'll ask what Sinding will do now, and he says he's looking for a way to appease Hircine. Then he mentions a majestic beast, and that it is said Hircine will commune with whoever slays it. Sinding tracked it into these woods, but then had the accident. He wants to beg for Hircine's forgiveness and give him the ring back, but he's stuck here while the beast wanders free. We'll offer to take the ring to Hircine, and Sinding says he doesn't want anything to do with this wretched thing anymore. He wishes us luck in tracking the beast, reminding us that the Lord of the Hunt should smile upon us. Then he says if we cross paths again, he will remember our kindness. Then we'll be given the ring, and it auto-equips. This can be a bit annoying when a quest item auto-attaches to you without your control, especially since those already with lycanthropy will have the ring cause you to transform randomly, which causes enough problems as is. But we'll deal with it shortly. We'll see Sinding transform and escape, and we'll track down the beast we need. We'll find a stag wandering the wilds near Falkreath, and we'll slay it, and its ghost will appear as the aspect of Hircine. We'll mention we just killed it, and Hircine says we did so skillfully, and that he's been watching us for ages. He says we have the makings of a fine hunter, mentioning we may be good enough to be his champion. We'll ask if he's Hircine, and he will agree that he is the spirit of the hunt. We'll ask him to remove the curse from the ring, and he says he will consider it if we do a service for his glory. He mentions the one who stole it fled to what he thinks is his sanctuary, but Hircine compares him to a bear, climbing a tree to escape the hunt, only to trap itself. We are to tear the skin from this rogue shifter's body, and make it an offering to Hircine. We'll say he's done us no wrong, so we won't kill him, as we're getting attacked from behind. Would have been nice if nothing could attack us during dialogue, or if they placed other hostile creatures away from this place. Anyway, Hircine says there is no retribution in the hunt, as it is not vengeance he seeks, but the blood course of a living hunt. Then he mentions others would gladly accept his favor. Then we'll save ourselves from dying, as the game decided to rape us for no reason. Thankfully we got all the dialogue we needed, so we can move on, but only barely. We'll head to Bloated Man's Grotto and find bloodstains outside. When we enter, we'll find several dead hunters and a wounded one who asks if the Blood Moon called us. We ask what happened, and he says the prey is stronger than the hunters, but more will come to bring him down before he dies. We'll follow the path and meet Sinding, who is surprised to see us here. We'll tell him we were told to kill him, and he says he would deserve it. He can't stop us if that's what we want to do, as Hircine is too powerful. Then he says if we spare him, he can be a powerful ally, and would promise to never return to civilized life, as he knows he can't live among people. From here, we can choose to kill or spare Sinding, and I'll show both outcomes. First, we'll spare him, and we'll join together to kill the other hunters. He'll thank us for our help, and the quest will end. If we head outside afterward, we'll be confronted by the aspect of Hircine again, who says we amused him by turning the tables on the hunters. Then he'll remove the curse of the ring, which allows werewolves to transform an unlimited amount of times a day, making it useful for fluffy fans. If we choose to kill Sinding, we'll follow him as he slaughters other hunters. We'll then catch up and kill him, and the aspect of Hircine now takes Sinding's human form as a ghost. That's such a confusing sentence now that I said it. Anyway, Hircine will be pleased and gives us the Savior's Hide in place of the ring to use in our future endeavors. It increases resistance to magic by 15% and poison by 50%, which is useful, but several defensive stats are undermined by magic protections and other armor bonuses, so I find this item to be a bit underwhelming. But with that, we'll move to the next quest. Now I'll become a slave of Malacath. We'll begin at the orc stronghold Largashbur, one of the many orc strongholds around Skyrim, to find the residents under attack by a giant. We'll help them deal with the threat before talking to Atub. We'll ask what's going on, and learn their tribe suffers because their chief, Ymars, was once a strong and proud warrior, but now is stricken with a curse. He is weak, and so the tribe is weak. The giants sense this and intrude on their territory and assault their very home. Ymars refuses help, but Atub senses that we may be what they need. We'll ask what we can do, and Atub says Ymars demands they stay inside their walls, but they must petition Malacath for relief for the curse to be lifted. Atub can't travel to Malacath's shrine, and she can't do it here because she lacks the materials she needs. She begs us to bring her troll fat and a Daedra heart, even though she has no wish to depend on a stranger, but she knows she has no choice. Before we grab the materials, we'll ask who Malacath is. She explains he is the keeper of oaths and the master of curses. He is quick to anger and slow to forgive. and she mentions that those who wrong Malacath will endure great torment in return. He demands loyalty and strength from his orcs. They have tried to please him, but now he's angry with them, so they suffer. Once we get the materials, either through exploration, theft, or trader, we'll return to Atub. She says that we should be a part of the ritual since we've become a part of this now. She'll lead us into the main hut, and we'll meet Ymars. He says Atub tries his patience with inviting an outsider, and insisting he calls on Malacath when he's clearly forsaken him. Atub correctly says doing nothing will not grant the tribe relief from the curse. Ymars begrudgingly agrees, and will head outside to the shrine. We'll observe the ritual as Atub calls to Malacath. Ymars asks why we're even bothering with this, and Malacath calls him a pathetic weakling. Mal asks why Ymars dare summon him, and says he doesn't deserve to call himself an orc as he's weak, small, and an embarrassment. Then he says Ymars let giants overrun his shrine, and offers he might lift the curse if Ymars brings the leader's club as an offering. Ymars agrees, and then says this is all our fault. Since we dragged him into fighting a giant, he says we're going to help him reach the giant without any trouble. He says he'll make it worth our while. We'll say fighting the giant isn't our job, and he says thanks to us, we've been issued a challenge in front of his tribe by a Daedric prince, so he can't ignore it. Then he says we're going to help him reach the giant, and tells us to meet him outside Fallowstone Cave. He reiterates that we'll clear the way to the giant for him, and he'll make sure we get paid for it. Then we'll head to the cave. We can follow Ymars there, or wait and then fast travel to the cave, whichever's faster. We can ask how long this has been going on once we catch up, and he says it's been weeks or longer. He says it's felt like an age has gone by, and hasn't slept in so long. Then we'll reiterate we're just here to help, and Ymars sarcastically says Malacath only took pity on them because of a useless outsider lending a hand. Then we'll head into the cave, with Ymars saying if there's a chance this will save him, he'll take it. We'll fight through a cave of bears, trolls, and a few giants as we follow the orc Disgrace. Then we'll reach an outside area, where Ymars stops us before we reach the giant at Malacath's shrine. He says he'll kill the giant unless we want to make some extra gold. He says he hasn't slept in weeks, so he's tired. If we kill the giant, bring him the hammer, and lie to say he did it, then we get paid. We can agree or disagree here, but the end result is the same. For now, we'll agree to it and head in to do a chump's work for him. We'll kill the giant and loot the club, and Ymars says we've a true fighting spirit, doing the deed better than he could, but he can't let us leave alive to preserve the lie. We'll blow him up, and Malacath says Ymars was a fool, always trying to scheme his way out of responsibilities. But we took care of him and the giants. 2 problems solved at once. Mal tells us to take the hammer back to Largashbur, and we'll see about whipping the rest of them into shape. But now a reload. We'll tell Ymars to do the deed, and we get a unique glitch. He is supposed to be killed by the giant easily, but he manages to kill it, and he enacts the dialogue as if we did it. We'll reload again to get the correct ending, and he gets wrecked by the giant for being an absolute noob at orcdom. We'll get the same dialogue from Mal, and then we'll head back to Large Ashburn. We'll return with the hammer, and Atub asks what came of Ymars. She asks if he died well, and we'll let her know he fought bravely, but the giant overpowered him. She says that is good, before Malacath calls him a coward and a weakling again, mentioning his deceitful ways have cost the tribe greatly. Atub asks what fate awaits the tribe, and Mal says they'll have to prove themselves, but he's willing to give them a chance. He names Galarzub as the new chief, and says we should hope he's a better chief. Then we're told to place the hammer on the shrine, as we're the only one who's proven worthy in all this. We'll place the giant's hammer, and it'll turn into Volendrung, Malacath's hammer, that absorbs 50 stamina points every hit, so this is the supreme weapon of skull cracking. With that, we'll move to the next quest. Now we'll check out Mehrunes Dagon. This quest typically starts by getting an invitation to the museum in Dawnstar by Silas Vesuvius. Upon reading it, he'll ask us to view the Museum of the Mythic Dawn and see the history of the cult that toppled the Septim dynasty. We'll head up to Dawnstar to check it out, and find Silas and Medena outside. Medena says Silas' ancestors wouldn't want this, but Silas asks why he should hide from his family's legacy. Medena says it's the past, dead oaths on dead lips as it were, and she says to let it stay there. Then Silas says the museum is opening, and their conversation ends, while ours is just beginning. We'll walk up to Silas, and he'll greet us as his first visitor. We'll ask about the argument we witnessed, and he says Medena is a good woman, but he has his own reasons for opening this museum, and he's not changing his mind. Then he says he's got a collection of artifacts from the group that toppled an empire, and their importance to history cannot be forgotten. Then he persuades us to come in, browse the displays, and talk, as he has a job we look perfect for. We'll enter Silas' museum and see several display cases containing various items of the Mythic Dawn. Silas will speak of them, saying their greatest accomplishment was the assassination of the Septim Dynasty and the opening of the Oblivion Gate, the primary conflict of the previous game in the Elder Scrolls series. We'll get dialogue with other details as we look at each display case, with Silas mentioning the scabbard with an Oblivion Gate insignia, a key symbol of Mehrunes Dagon, the patron Daedra of the Mythic Dawn. Then he'll talk of the books in another case, saying they are the commentaries on the mysterious Xarxes, and were written by the Mythic Dawn cult leader, Mankar Cameron. He promised a paradise to his followers when they died, and they would be reborn by Mehrunes Dagon's side. Now we'll talk to Silas. We'll ask what the Mythic Dawn cult was, and he says they were worshippers of Dagon, the Daedric Lord of Destruction and Change. They killed Uriel Septim VII and his heirs, triggering the events that led to the Oblivion Crisis when the Daedra invaded Tamriel. All that remains of the cult resides in this room. We'll ask who Mehrunes Dagon is, and he repeats what he mentioned earlier. He's the Daedric Lord of Change, Destruction, and Ambition, and his cult caused the Oblivion Crisis. Then we'll ask why he opened the museum, and he says it's no secret his family were once members of the Mythic Dawn. One of his forefathers was even chosen to assassinate Uriel Septim himself. His family hid from their past for years, becoming tradesmen and people of coin and influence. But Silas realized that the Mythic Dawn's importance to history, and his family's importance, cannot be denied. You'll see everyone in Tamriel remember that for a moment, they held the fate of the world in their hands, for good or ill. Then we'll finally ask about this job he wants done. He'll give us a history lesson first. After the Oblivion Crisis, a number of groups cropped up dedicated to wiping out the remnants of the Mythic Dawn. One of these groups found Mehrunes' razor, the artifact of the Daedric prince. They split it into 3 fragments and pledged to keep them apart forever. That was almost 150 years ago, and the pieces are still being kept by their descendants, and they're all conveniently here in Skyrim. We'll infer we are to grab the fragments, and Silas says at least 2 of the owners, Gunzul and Draskua, are dangerous marauders, but the third owner, Jorgen, is only known to live in Morthal. Silas will give us his notes about the 3 of them, and says he'll gladly pay for getting the pieces any way we can, with no questions asked. We can ask about the razor itself, and Silas informs us it has always heralded bloody change and carnage. It held many names, Dagger of the Final Wounds, Bane of the Righteous, the Kingslayer, etc. The Mythic Dawn worshipped Dagon as a god, so having the razor would be invaluable to his collection. Now we'll look for the pieces. The book we got, called The Keepers of the Razor, details the locations of each piece and who should possess them. Jorgen bears the hilt in Morthal, Gunzul bears the blade shards in Cracked Tusk Keep, and Draskua bears the pommel at the top of Dead Crone Rock. We'll be heading to Jorgen in Morthal, as he's the simplest and easiest to deal with. We'll mention looking for pieces of Mehrunes' razor, and he says he doesn't know what we're talking about. We'll say Silas says otherwise, and Jorgen has heard of him, and Jorgen's father had suspicions about his connections to the MD. Then he says he doesn't need this, as his family wasted 8 generations keeping the razor safe from a dead cult. As far as he cares, it can stay locked in his house. We'll offer to pay for it, and he says the mill could use some new blades. So he agrees and gives us the keys to his house and a chest to grab it. I have no idea why he's allowing us inside his home for this, or why he'd willingly give us the key, but thanks dude. Made our lives easier. We'll enter his abode and grab what we need and nothing more. Now we'll head for the next piece at Cracked Tusk Keep. This is west of Falkreath, and we'll have some fun vaporizing the orcs here as we search for the blade shards. We'll find Gunzul and toast him to grab a key that unlocks the contraptions leading to the shard pieces in the basement. We'll go through a few gates and traps before grabbing the blade shards. Now we're heading to Dead Crone Rock in the Reach. This is the toughest piece to grab, as Dead Crone Rock is full of Forsworn enemies, meaning their scaling can produce some tough encounters. We'll reach Hag Rock Redoubt, the bottom area before the Crone Rock, and use the dark side of the Force to annihilate all who stand in our way. To be fair, this is a bit of a stretch, as the enemies are tough here given this character's level and the insane damage boost they sometimes gain. After battling through many Forsworn, we'll reach Dead Crone Rock and find Draskua, the Hag Raven, holding the pommel. We'll grab it and the word fear for the dismay shout. Then we'll return to Silas. We can give him each piece individually as we get them, or drop them all at once, which is what I prefer to do. Doing so has him complement our efficiency, and then pays us a combined total of 3,000 gold. Then he says all the pieces of Mehrunes' razor are in his hands, before saying he'll let us in on something. The scabbard in the display case is a secret 4th piece built to house the razor, and there's more. Silas knows how to put all the pieces together, and we just need to take them to Dagon's shrine and contact him directly. We'll ask if he thinks Dagon will repair the razor, and Silas says ever since he was a boy, he felt a strange sense of destiny surrounding the MD cult, and now he knows what it is. Fate has led us to him, and to the pieces, so Dagon has to answer our call. We'll meet Silas at the shrine in the mountains between Morthal, Dawnstar, and Whiterun. We'll see Silas place the pieces of the razor onto the altar, and he calls to Dagon, begging him to bring the blade back to its former glory. Dagon doesn't respond, so he asks us to give it a try. When we do, Dagon speaks to us, saying we are worthy of speaking to. We have claimed the pieces of his razor, calling it an amusing game to witness. Then he says he does not declare a winner while a pawn remains on the board. Then he tells us to kill Silas, as he and his family have served their purpose. If we kill him, we will take our place as Dagon's champion, or he will crush us. From here, we can spare Silas, and he'll run back to the museum to keep the pieces of Mehrunes' razor in a display case, or we can kill him to gain Mehrunes' razor and a hoard of goodies. We'll choose the goodies and kill Silas. Dagon is pleased, and he gives us the razor to wreak havoc on Tamriel. He will tell us to place our hands on his altar once more, and he will reassemble Mehrunes' razor. Then he'll give us a final challenge before laughing, as he spawns 2 Dremora. We'll kill them and loot them for their Daedric hearts and a key for the shrine. The key unlocks a treasure trove with lots of valuable ores, gear, and 2 more Dremora to deal with. This area also respawns after a period, so this becomes a great place to farm Daedric hearts and valuable loot. But with that, we now have the razor, which has a small chance to instantly kill a target. This includes NPCs that go down on a knee instead of dying. However, there are 2 exceptions, Miraak and Karstag, both found in the Dragonborn DLC that we'll tackle later. With that, another Daedric artifact found, and another friend stabbed in the back. Beginning to see a pattern here. Anyway, let's move on. Next up is Mephala, and we'll begin by bugging the innkeeper in Whiterun for rumors, until we hear one of the Jarl's children being strange, as word around town says one's turning wicked, and the others have an ill-favored look to them. Then we'll get an objective to talk to the Jarl about his kids being naughty. We'll let him know we heard there's trouble with his kids, and Balgruuf points to his youngest son, as he's a dark child and the Jarl doesn't know what to do with him. He was always a quiet child, but lately became brooding and violent. He won't say a word to Balgruuf, but the Jarl doesn't know how he upset his son. The Jarl will ask us to speak with his son to draw out the truth. Then we'll look into Nelkir. When we talk to him, he says the disgusting pig sent us to bother him. Then he says one day he'll tear the Jarl's face apart so he can leave him alone. He says his father doesn't know anything about him, but Nelkir knows about his father and the war, more than the Jarl might think. We'll ask how he knows these things, and Nelkir will mention this castle being old, with lots of places nobody's been in a long while, places where we can overhear and see things. Then he mentions the Whispering Lady. We'll ask who she is, but Nelkir says she won't give a name. Then he says he's gotten good at listening to keyholes, and at the door in the basement, he hears the lady talk to him. He thought he was caught, but then she started telling him more secrets, but he can't open the door. We'll ask where it is, and he says it's in the basement, and we'll see it if we look. Nelkir bets the Whispering Lady will talk to us, too. We'll find the door in a lower area under the kitchen in a closet, where we can listen at the door. Doing so has a voice say that, at last, someone more fit for carrying out her will has come. She says the child is spirited, but lacks agency. We'll ask if someone is behind the door, and she says she cannot reach our plane so directly, but forgives us for not knowing who she is, as few hear her whispers anymore. Then we get her name, Mephala, and she tugs at the web of connections between mortals: love, hatred, loyalty, betrayal. She says the boy was good at sussing out secrets, but expects us to take on a more active role. We'll ask what to do, and she says we must first open this door. A piece of her power was locked behind it, and even her eyes cannot see past the seals. She'd rather it be in the hands of an ambitious and talented person such as us. We'll ask who can open the door, and Mephala says the whole of Whiterun is ripe with paranoia and tensions. The Jarl's court is right to fear the power she holds behind this door. She says the Jarl trusts few, and they will be his undoing. Nelkir knows of what she speaks, and will be told to let him guide our path. Talking to Nelkir shows us he can tell that we've talked to Mephala. We'll ask how to open the door, and he reiterates that he knows everything about this castle. For some reason, that door is special, and only 2 people can open it, the Jarl and Farengar. How we get the key from them is up to us. Then he mentions nobody would notice if Farengar went missing. Devious little bugger, isn't he? We can pickpocket the key off either of them, or kill Farengar for it. We'll successfully pickpocket the key off of Farengar and return to the door. When we open it, we'll find the ebony blade and a book, Admonition Against Ebony. The book begs the reader to turn around and leave this corrupted blade behind, as they tried and failed to destroy it. Then we'll pick it up, and Mephala will speak to us. She says we're sharp enough to understand that the ebony blade doesn't match the description we know. We'll inspect it, and it absorbs the life essence of foes, and is strengthened by the blood of deceit, or rather, killing your friends and those who favor you. Mephala says that the blade has languished too long outside the winds of alliance and betrayal. To return to its past glory, it must drink the blood of deceit. She says our world is admirably seeped in lies and inclinations. The blade is a darling leech that feeds on deceptions and nourishes its master. We're told to seek out those closest to us, and the final pluck of their misguided heartstrings will accompany the blade in the song of our grandeur. The ebony blade basically upgrades as you kill more friendly NPCs you've caused to like you, increasing the amount of health it returns when it hits someone. It's a very unique but cumbersome weapon, as you have to murder 10 NPCs to fully charge the blade. This could potentially lock you out of 10 quests or worthwhile interactions, so this is a toss-up for me in terms of actually going through with upgrading it, but that's up to the player. Now let's move on to the next quest. We'll begin Meridia's quest after reaching her shrine in Hafingar. Another option is randomly finding Meridia's beacon, which will appear in random chests once we reach a threshold, and it will haunt us until we pick it up, with Meridia bugging us to come to her shrine. We're skipping that bit now because it's annoying, but we'll grab it later. Anyway, when we reach the shrine, she says a new supplicant approaches. She says to hear and obey. A foul darkness has seeped into her temple that we must destroy, but first we must restore her beacon. She will guide us to it and tasks us to return it here to receive a reward. This will generate the beacon in a random location, so we'll head over to grab it. When we do, Meridia says it isn't time for rejoicing, as the Defiler continues to profane her temple. If we return the beacon to her shrine, we shall become her instrument of her cleansing light. When we return with the beacon and place it in the shrine holder thing, Meridia will lift us high into the sky and speak to us, where we get a nice view of the surrounding area. Meridia will say it's time for her splendor to return to Skyrim, but the token of her truth is buried in the ruins of her once great temple. It's now tainted by a profane darkness skittering within. We'll learn the necromancer Malcorin defiles Meridia's shrine with his vile corruptions, trapping lost souls left in the wake of the Civil War to do his bidding. Worse still, he uses the power stored in her token to fuel his foul deeds. That is why we were brought here. We are to be her champion, enter the temple, retrieve her artifact, and destroy the Defiler. We'll agree to do her bidding, and she says Malcorin has forced the doors shut, but this is Meridia's temple, and it responds to her decree. She will send down a ray of light that we must guide through the temple to open the doors. Then we'll fall back to Earth and enter the temple. We'll be fighting dark shades of dead spirits and find desecrated corpses all over the place. We'll also find the light Meridia mentioned, and we'll have to activate different beacons throughout the temple to lead the light from point to point until we reach Malcorin. Once we reach the final chamber, we'll confront Malcorin and take him down. He can be a bit tough as he is a mage, but we're a better one, and take him down, as well as his spirit afterwards. Once all the spirits are dealt with, Meridia will tell us to take Dawnbreaker from its pedestal. We'll also loot it from the ground, as Malcorin would have used it to fight us. Now we have 2 Dawnbreakers, which makes for some fun dual-wielding if you want to give it a try. Anyway, we'll appear outside in the sky again to talk to Meridia. She says with Malcorin vanquished, Skyrim's dead shall remain at rest, as it should be, because of us. A new day is dawning, and we shall be its herald. We're told to take Dawnbreaker and purge corruption from the dark corners of the world. We are to wield it in Meridia's name, that her influence may grow. We'll agree to her terms, and she says may the light of certitude guide our efforts before we fall down again. When we look at Dawnbreaker, we can see it burns for 15 points of damage, and when killing undead, there is a chance to cause a fiery explosion that turns or destroys nearby undead. This is basically an undead destroyer in the right hands, so feel free to cosplay as a holy paladin fighting to let the dead rest for real. But with that, we've completed another quest, this time without screwing someone else over, which is a nice change of pace, but we'll get back to that in the next quest. Now we'll head for Molag Bal by checking out a haunted house in Markarth. When we come near it, we'll hear Tyrannus asking Ingvar about the house. Ingvar says he knows nothing, and Tyrannus asks if anyone was seen entering or leaving, and if any strange lights or unusual sounds occurred. Ingvar bluntly says it's abandoned, and always has been. Then Tyrannus will turn his attention to us and ask the same questions. We'll say no, and he says it seems no one in the city has. Then he explains he's a vigilant of Stendarr, and he believes this house might have been used for Daedra worship, evil rites, and so forth. We'll offer to help, and he says he was about to head inside, and it would be good to have someone watch his back. We'll be told to follow and keep our eyes open, with Tyrannus saying Daedra are powerful tricksters, so we'll never know what we'll find. When we enter the house, Tyrannus notices fresh food and no rot on the furniture, so someone's been here recently. Then Tyrannus will hear a noise and will lead us deeper into the place. We'll find a door requiring a key, and when we click on it, an item becomes possessed, and Tyrannus says this isn't an ordinary Daedra, and we need to get help. Then Molag Bal will speak to us, saying Tyrannus is weak, but we are strong, and we should crush him. We won't be allowed to leave the building until we kill Tyrannus, who tells the Daedra to get out of his head, meaning he's hearing something too. Bal says we will kill or we will die, and Tyrannus says he won't die before we fry his brain cells. Then Bal says our reward is waiting further down. We'll head into the bowels of the house to find a shrine with a mace on it. When we interact with it, we'll be trapped, and Bal calls us a fool for thinking Molag Bal, the Lord of Domination, would so easily reward us. He'll ask what we see from the cage, and we'll say we see a rusted mace. Bal says there was a time when this mace dripped with the blood of the feeble and the worthless. Then he mentions a Daedric lord has his enemies, and his rival Boethiah had her priests desecrate it, and they left it here to decay until we came. This brings up an interesting conflict of interest since we've become champion to so many Daedric princes, but they fight each other. So how can we be a champion for both sides? It's something that I wish the developers did something with, since we don't have anything meaningful come from being a part of one side or the other, or both at once. It could have led to some interesting content in my opinion. Anyway, we'll ask Bal if he wants revenge, and he says no. He wants submission, and the priest who did this to bend his knee and give him his soul. He comes by to perform Boethiah's insulting rites at Bal's altar, but he's been missing. He was captured, bound, and left to rot. We are to save him and allow him to perform his rite one more time, and when he does, we'll be waiting for him. Now we'll head out to find the priest. He'll be at a random Forsworn camp, and we'll clear the area before talking to him. Logrolf the Willful asks if we're here to kill him while he's helpless. We'll say we're here to rescue him, and he questions who sent us, as no one knew where he was when he was taken. We can lie to say Boethiah, bribe him, or intimidate him by being honest that Molag Bal sent us, but most results require a high speech skill to give a chance to succeed. We'll tell him Molag Bal sent us, and he says the King of Corruption sends his messenger to challenge him, so he'll meet with Bal and venerate his altar in Boethiah's name, as he did before. Then we'll untie him and meet him back at the house. We'll follow him inside and watch him be trapped as we were. He taunts Bal, saying he has won this contest before. Bal mentions he has his own champion this time, and then we're given the rusted mace to use against Logrolf. We'll crush the spirit out of him by whacking him with the mace. We'll deplete his health until he dies, and Molag Bal resurrects him, mocking our frail, limp, pathetic bodies. We'll knock Logrolf to the ground, and he gives in, begging for mercy, and pledges his soul to Molag Bal, along with forsaking Boethiah. Then Bal will ask us to kill him, and we will for real this time, resulting in a really awkward beating for the old man in a cage. Then we'll be given the mace of Molag Bal, and its creator says he gives us its true power. When our enemies lie broken and bloody before us, he says to know he will be watching. We'll thank him, and he mentions he has a soul awaiting him in Oblivion that needs claiming, and asks us to take care of the house while he's gone, before he leaves with an evil laugh. We'll look at the mace of Molag Bal and see that it does 37 stamina damage, 37 magicka damage, and fills a soul gem if the target dies, making this a very useful weapon against warrior and mage alike, especially with soul capture added to it. But with that, let's move on to the next quest. We'll coincidentally be in the right city to begin the next quest for Namira, beginning by witnessing an interaction between Thongvor and Verulus. Thong over here is demanding to know what Verulus is hiding, and when the priest says something is closed for a reason, Undergarment says it's typical Imperial lies. First they take away Talos, and now they're keeping them from seeing the honored dead. Then he says that Verulus and the Jarl will answer for any desecration of Underwear's ancestors' bodies. Verulus says they're done, and we'll talk to him. We'll ask why we can't enter the Hall of the Dead, and Verulus says he can't talk about it, but reassures us the Jarl hears everyone's concerns, and will be able to visit the dead again soon. We'll persuade him to tell us so we can help, and he says they discovered some of the dead had been eaten. Flesh chewed off, bones broken to get at the marrow inside, that sort of thing. They haven't caught anyone or anything yet, as it's like it knows when he's in there. If we can get to the bottom of this, the priesthood of Arche will reward us. Then he'll give us the key and tells us to be careful. We'll enter the Hall of the Dead and hear a woman say not many would walk blindly into a crypt, smelling of steel and blood, but not fear. She can feel the hunger inside of us, saying it gnaws at us. She says we see the dead, and our mouth grows wet, and our stomach growls. She will not shun us for what we are, and asks us to stay so she can tell us everything we have forgotten. Then Iola finds us, and questions if we were young when we first tasted human flesh from a sibling that died from an accident. Then the hunger set in, a curiosity as well, and questioned what harm would come from one bite. She says it's okay now, and we found a friend who understands us, and she tells us to let go of our guilt. We'll question what guilt she's talking about, and Iola says a lot of our kind block out the memory of their first meal, as it is too shameful, but we don't need to hide anymore. For the sake of this quest, we're going to roll with cannibalism. That's quite a statement, isn't it? Anyway, Iola says Namira, the Lady of Decay, accepts us for what we are, and has a place for us where we can sate our appetites without judgment. We'll learn this place is inside a Reachcliff cave, but the dead have stirred from their slumber recently, and Iola was forced here. Sounds like your meal had enough of you nibbling on it. Then she'll ask us to meet her there to fight our way to Namira's embrace. She'll mention to tell the people of Markarth their dead won't be disturbed anymore, as we have bigger plans ahead. Then she'll go invisible, and we'll have to make it to Reachcliff Cave. Before that, we'll inform Varulus the hall is safe, and he'll give us an amulet of Archay as a reward. Then we'll meet Iola at the cave, and we'll tell her to wait here while we toast some zombies, but she'll bug us until we let her tag along. We'll cut through Draugr, with Iola saying they taste foul. This makes sense, as the Draugr are likely decades, if not centuries old or more. Imagine eating 100-year-old chicken nuggets. Moving on, we'll clear the area, and Iola says the shrine is ours again, and we need to prepare a feast to welcome us into Namira's coven. We'll need fresh meat, so Iola recommends a priest filled with the taste of an easy life, Varulus. We're to give him some gold and tell him we need Archay's help exploring an old cavern for treasure. When he stands in Namira's presence, she will take care of the rest. We'll be given 100 gold, we'll find a shortcut back outside for ease of access, and we'll talk to Varulus. We'll mention needing a priest in our travels, and he expects we need Archay's protection while delving into tombs. He says his duties keep him busy in the city, so he doesn't know if he can help. We'll attempt to persuade him with treasure, but he rebuffs it by saying the priesthood of Archay have a joke about an empty pocket being better than a full grave, which is a good point. Then we'll pay him 425 gold, way over budget given what we got from Iola, and he says that's no small amount of coin. Then he supposes he can come with us for a short venture and tell us to lead on. We'll bring him back to the cave, and we'll find a feast with several people from Markarth. Varulus worriedly asks what's going on, before Iola turns on the charm, saying she's his friend in a sort of Jedi mind trick. He's been invited to dinner, and is told to lay down while we get the feast ready. He'll head up to the altar and lie down as we hear the others talking of their cannibalistic deeds. Then we'll awkwardly wait for instructions as Iola gets stuck before joining us at the shrine. She says the meal is on Namira's table, and tells us to carve. We will, and will feast on Varulus' body. We'll then hear Namira. Our consumption of the blood and bile of Archay's own is pleasing to her. She gives us her ring, and asks that when we wear it and feed, she will grant us her power. Then Iola says she knew we were special when we walked into the Hall of the Dead. Now we're here as the champion of Namira and keeper of her ring. Iola becomes follower material here, and we're free to stay and mingle, with us learning a few things about some of the residents of this club. Lisbeth inherited her store from her late husband, mentioning that he had such good taste. We'll ask if Iola started this coven of Namira, and she says it's existed for thousands of years, as Namira is a goddess and has been worshipped since time began. She's honored to be leading the latest generation of Namira's faithful. We'll also hear Hogni has the bloodiest beef in the Reach, and Banning's war dogs have a reason why they are so eager to bite people. Lots of cannibal work to be done if you can avoid being caught. Now we'll look at the Ring of Namira. It increases stamina by 50 points, and after feeding on corpses, we're granted 50 health and increased regeneration for 5 minutes. Useful, but that takes up our ring slot and requires we eat often, something that mechanically could become a problem in some situations. But with that, we'll move on to the next quest after betraying another person. We'll find Peryite at his shrine along with a Khajiit, Kesh the Clean. Talking to him has him ask if we're here to commune with Peryite, Taskmaster and Blighted Lord. We'll ask to be told about Peryite. Kesh says Peryite is the pus in the wound. Proper ones curl their nose, but it's pus that drinks foul humors and restores the blood. Kesh says he worships Peryite because sometimes the world can only be cleansed by disease. Then we'll ask to commune with Peryite, and Kesh tells us not everyone has the stomach required to entreat his lord. Kesh likes us though, and says there is a way we can speak to Peryite. We'll need the incense, which requires deathbell flower, 1 silver ingot, a flawless ruby, and some vampire dust. These ingredients are gatherable via various vendors, depending on who they are and what they sell, but the hardest to find can be the flawless ruby. Regardless of how we got them, we'll gather the incense ingredients and return them to Kesh. He will create the incense in a Dwemer pot near the shrine itself, and when finished, we'll get a good sniff. When we inhale the fumes, we commune with the Pus Lord. We'll ask if we've been poisoned, and he says we have in a sense, but no more poisoned than a fool after too much wine. When we ask what he wants from us, he says he's watched us for some time. The decisions we've made intrigue him, and he wonders if we are the proper agent for a task. We'll ask for details, and learn Peryite sent a blessing to Mundus, a wasting plague that infected a scattering of Breton villages. One of his monks, or Chendor, was sent to gather these afflicted. He shepherded them into Bethardams for him, but has since lost his way. Pussus Maximus will not stand for betrayal, and wants us to kill Orchendor in his name. We'll ask why Orchard deserves to die, and Peryite says that is an impertinent question. The elf must die, and we either carry out his will or not, as we aren't his only mortal agent he could send. We'll ask what we'll gain from this, and Peryite chastises the pettiness of mortals, then offers to grant us a powerful token, capable of shielding us from both spell and sword. We'll say we've heard his request, and will be released. Then we'll talk to Kesh about Orchendor and Bethardams. He says he knew Orchi, as he was supposed to contain the festering wound. Orchard and his afflicted are meant to stand ready, awaiting Peryite's command to cover the world with his blessing. Then we'll ask about Bethardams. Kesh says it's not far, and tells us to look west to the foot of the mountain to find it. Then we'll head west, just as Tolkien intended for an elf like me. We'll reach the Dwemer ruin and fight through the afflicted. They act like regular enemies, some with melee weapons, some with spells, but they all have a chance to use a spitting attack where they barf on us. It's gross and does lots of damage, so keep an eye on the goo flying around. We'll cut down several afflicted, via lightning, swords, or Dwemer traps, as well as Dwem tech bots. We'll eventually reach Orchendor. He is very powerful and can resist Thunderbolt, so we'll whack him to the best of our ability as he teleports around. Once killed, we'll loot what we can and return to Peryite. He'll say all things are in their order, and Orchendor roams the pits. His betrayal will be punished, and our obedience rewarded. We'll ask what will become of the afflicted, and Peryite questions if we left any alive. Then he says they are mere vessels for his blessing, and will spread to others through their touch and his own. Another overseer will replace Orchard when the time comes, and for now all is cleansed and ordered. We'll ask what happens now, and we are sent to seek our fate, as Peryite will be watching, and perhaps we'll meet again. We'll say goodbye, and we're told to embrace order and hard truth before Pussman bids us farewell. We'll have received our reward, Spellbreaker. This shield creates a ward that also protects against spells up to 50 points of damage, which is helpful for those dealing with magic users. Overall, a pretty good item for tank builds, especially with that magic defense. Now let's move on to the next quest. We'll begin Sanguine's quest by getting invited to a drinking contest by Sam Guevenet. We'll go back and forth taking shots of his special brew until we win, and we get a staff as our reward. Sam mentions we're a fun person to drink with, and he knows a great little place where the wine flows like water, and we should head there. Then he says we don't look so good before we black out. We'll reawaken with Senna demanding we wake up, as she calls us a drunken blasphemer. When we ask why we're a blasphemer, she says we don't remember fondling the statuary, or coming in here blathering incoherently about marriage and a goat. Then she mentions we don't remember losing our temper and throwing trash everywhere. We'll ask if a man named Sam was with us, and Senna sidesteps the question, saying Dibella teaches love and compassion, but that doesn't mean they're going to tell us what we want to know and let us walk away. She tells us to pick up our mess, then apologize, and if they think we're sincere, they'll consider lending us aid. We'll ask to know how we got here, and that will pay for the damages. Senna says they could always use contributions, and explains we came in ranting about Rorikstead, so we should start there. We'll run over to Rorikstead and talk to one of the farmers, Enos. He says we have a lot of nerve showing ourselves in this town again. We'll say we're sorry, and he says sorry isn't good enough, especially not while his Gleda is out there, alone and afraid. He says we kidnapped her and sold her to a giant. We'll say that sounds bad, and Enos says he'll never breed another prize-winning goat like Gleda. We'll attempt to persuade Enos that we need to find Sam and the staff in order to get Gleda back, but he's not buying it, as we didn't need either to sell Gleda to a giant in the first place. Then we'll offer 1,000 gold for help retracing our steps, and as payment for the goat. Enos begrudgingly agrees, saying we left a note, and the only bit he could read was, after repaying Isolde in Whiterun. Now we're off to Whiterun. We'll talk to Isolde, and she says she's been patient, but we still owe her. We'll say we've been getting that a lot, and she asks what's wrong, and then asks if the engagement fell through. Then she says we can call it even if we bring back the wedding ring. She says it's a shame, as she was looking forward to the wedding, as we said we'd have all the most interesting guests. We'll ask what we did with the ring, and Isolde says we went right out to give it to our fiancé. She degrades us, asking if we even remember where we left her. Then she mentions us telling a sweet story of how we met in Witchmist Grove. Then she says she can see why she left us. Lots of tomfoolery here, as you can see. We'll ask for details of that story, and she says we met our fiancé at the full moon, under the biggest tree in Witchmist Grove, surrounded by fireflies. Then we'll just pay her for the ring, and Isolde says we mentioned Morvunskar as the place for the ceremony. Then we'll head there. We'll find it full of mages, and after wiping them out, we'll find a portal to Misty Grove. Once there, we'll follow a path to a little shindig in the woods. We'll find Sam, and he says he was beginning to think we might not make it. We'll say it was quite a trip, and we ask where we are. Sam says he thought we might not remember our first trip here, as we had a big night. He thinks we definitely earned the staff. We'll say we have all the things needed to repair it for some reason, and Sam says we can throw all that out, and he reveals he's Sanguine. He says he really just needed something to encourage us to go out into the world and spread merriment. We'll ask if all of this was just a prank, and Sanguine is offended, as the Daedric Lord of Debauchery does not deal in mere pranks. This may have begun as minor amusement, but it wasn't long before he realized we'd make a more interesting bearer of his not-quite-holy staff, and we'll get the Sanguine Rose. We'll ask why he chose us, and he admits he's not always thinking his decisions through, but we're going places. Maybe a little influence from our old Uncle Sanguine could help adjust our course a bit. We'll say thanks, and he says it was his pleasure, but it's time for us to go. No fun keeping up in here with the staff. We'll appear in the Bannered Mare where this all started, and learn the Sanguine Rose summons a Daedra for 60 seconds. Basically, a staff giving us a beefy summon that looks cool. While useful, it's rather one-dimensional compared to some of the other Daedric items. One thing I will mention is there are many opportunities to do extra stuff throughout this quest if you're broke, and want to retrace all the steps that led us here. But that's for you to find, as I didn't record it. My apologies. But now it's time to move on. We'll begin Sheogorath's quest in Solitude by talking to Dervenin. He desperately pleads to help his master, as he is lost between worlds, and he can't bring him back. We'll ask what he needs, and he says his master abandoned him and his people, and nothing Derv says can change his mind. Now he won't even see him, as he says Derv has interrupted his vacation. Derv says it's been many years, and asks again for help. We'll ask why he hasn't left his master, and Derv says we don't understand. Without his master, Derv is not free. Without him, he is doomed, as all of his master's empire shall fall into chaos. We'll ask how to find his master, and Derv says the last he saw him, he was visiting an old friend in the Blue Palace, but no one as mundane as the Jarl, as people such as that are below him. Derv says his master went into the forbidden wing of the palace to speak with an old friend. He said it had been ages since they had last had tea. Then Derv mentions we need the hip bone, as it's very important, as we can't enter Pelagius' wing without that. Then we'll gain Pelagius' hip bone, and we'll head for the Blue Palace. We'll need to gain access to the forbidden area of the palace, so we'll talk to Erdi. She says she'd get into trouble if she let us in, with her mentioning it's scary in there. We'll lie, saying the steward asked us to check it out, and she supposes it's okay to let us in briefly. Then she'll give us the key, and we'll enter the forbidden wing. It's not been entered in quite a while, as can be seen by the cobwebs around the place. Then we'll be randomly teleported to another location. We'll find two people having a snack, and we'll listen to their conversation.
Oh, I couldn't. Goes right through me. Besides, I have so many things to do. So many undesirables to contend with. Naysayers, buffoons, detractors. Why, my headsman hasn't slept in 3 days.
You are far too hard on yourself, my dear, sweet, homicidally insane Pelagius. What would the people do without you? Dance, sing, smile, grow old? You are the best septum that's ever ruled. Well, except for that Martin fella. But he turned into a dragon god, and that's hardly sport. You know, I was there for that whole sordid affair. Marvelous time. Butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head, and the cheese to die for.
Yes, as you've said countless times before.
Harumph. Well then, if you're going to be like that, perhaps it's best I take my leave. A good day to you, sir. I said good day.
Yes, go. Leave me to my ceaseless responsibilities and burdens.
Eccentric people are fun. We'll finally talk to Sheo, and he says it's rude. He can't be bothered to host an old friend for a decade or two. We'll say we're here to deliver a message, and Sheo reacts.
Really? Oh, what kind of message? A song? A summons? Wait, I know! A death threat written on the back of an Argonian concubine. Those are my favorites. Well, spit it out, mortal. I haven't got an eternity. Actually, I do. Little joke.
We'll tell him we were asked to retrieve him from his vacation, and he tries to guess who was asking.
By whom? Wait! Don't tell me. I want to guess. Was it Molag? No. Little Tim. The Toymaker's son, huh? Huh? The ghost of King Lysandes? Or was it one? Yes! Stanley, the talking grapefruit from Passwall! Ha ha! I'm wrong on all accounts, aren't I? Ha! No matter! Honestly, I don't want to know. Why ruin the surprise?
I just love the crazy characters when the voice actors get into it. Anyway, Sheo asks what we, as a tiny, puny, expendable little mortal, actually think we can do to convince him to leave. Then he mentions we must realize who we're dealing with. We'll say all we know is that his people need him to return, and he mocks us with a yawn, saying he suddenly felt bored. He says we stand before Sheogorath, the Daedric Prince of Madness, and all we deem fit to do is deliver a message. He finds it sad. We'll ask if that means he'll leave or not, and he says that's the real question. He asks honestly how much time off could a demented Daedra really need. He says he's going to leave and return to the humdrum day-to-day on one condition. We have to find the way out first, and he wishes us luck with that. We'll ask what the catch is, and Sheo mentions he loves it when mortals know they're being manipulated, as it makes things infinitely more interesting. We're told to take a look around, as he says this is not the Solitude Botanical Gardens, and asks us to question where we truly are. He says we're in the mind of Emperor Pelagius III, the dead, homicidally insane monarch. He predicts that we'll question using our swords and spells and all that, before saying we could use the Wabbajack with great fanfare. We'll auto-equip the Wabbajack and party attire, and use the Wabba to escape Pelagius' mind. We'll head to 3 scenarios to free ourselves, with Sheo saying this one was a good choice, at least for him. He finds everyone being out to get you so terribly entertaining, but we might find it less so. Then we'll learn that Pelagius' mother was unique, although in the grand scheme, fairly average for a septim. She wielded fear like a cleaver, or did she wield a cleaver that made people afraid? Sheo never gets that part right. But she taught her son well, as Pell learned at an early age that danger can come from anywhere, at any time, and delivered by anyone. Then he says the objective here is simple. Use the Wabbajack to defeat the enemy while they do the same. We're led to believe that we need to blast the Atronachs, but the real enemy is the crowd in the stands. We'll tap them with the Wabba, and they're turned into wolves. Sheo says he thought we'd never figure it out, and learn that with the threat gone, Pell is under the delusion that he is safe, which means we've helped him sort of, and we're much closer to home. We'll return to Sheo and say Pell's paranoia is gone. He says it's lovely, and now all Pell has to worry about are the several hundred legitimate threats. Next we'll go down the path of dreams, which unfortunately for us, Pell suffered night terrors from a young age. All we need to do is find something to wake our poor Pell up. We'll find his terrors easy to repel, but persistent. We'll shoot Pell with the Wabba, and then shoot the threats that appear. We'll deal with a wolf that will turn into a goat, a bandit chief turn into a kid, and a hagraven into a whore. Sorry, sultry maiden. Then we'll finish with a flame atronach and a dragon priest. Sheo will say with Pell up and about, we're moving right along, and we'll be home in no time. We'll return to Sheo, and he says his dear Pell can hate himself for being legitimately afraid of things that actually threaten his existence, but only during the day. We'll head down the final path, a sad one, where Sheo explains Pelagius hated and feared many things, assassins, wild dogs, the undead, pumpernickel, but the deepest was for himself. The attacks he makes on himself can be seen here fully. They are always carried out on the weakest part of his fragile self. The self-loathing enhances Pelagius' anger, but his confidence will shrink with every hit, and we must bring the two into balance. We'll Wabba these jacks to decrease the threats and increase Pelagius. Sheo says he's finally ready to love himself and continue hating everyone else. We'll return to Sheo, saying we've fixed Pelagius' mind. Sheo says fixed is a subjective term, thinking treated is far more appropriate. It's like one does to a rash or an arrow in the face. But Sheo says it doesn't matter, as though we are a heartless mortal, we've actually succeeded and survived. Sheo is forced to honor his end of the bargain. He says we're free to go. but he has been known to change his mind, so we should go. Sheo says Pelagius, once the mad emperor of Tamriel, is now so boringly sane. Sheo knew he had it in him. Then he supposes it's back to the Shivering Isles. The trouble Haskell can get into while he's gone simply boggles the mind. Then Sheo goes through his checklist before leaving.
Let's make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Clothes? Check. Beard? Check. Luggage? Luggage? Now where did I leave my luggage?
Gotta enjoy the insane sometimes. Anyway, Sheo will leave us the Wabbajack. He tells us to take care of ourselves, and if we ever find ourselves in New Sheoth, he asks we look him up to share a strawberry tort. Now let's talk about the Wabbajack, the most random Daedric item in the game. Here is a list of what it can do, taken directly from the wiki, as I didn't know all of these before researching it. The Wabbajack can randomly cause 60 points of fire, frost, or shock damage, absorb attributes, damaging the target's health, stamina, and magicka by 50% of their maximum value, and restoring the player's attributes by 50% of their maximum values, make the target invisible, heal the target for 75 points, and in some cases instantly kill the target. Along with its offensive abilities, it can also randomly transform a target into a chicken, rabbit, mud crab, dramora, more rarely into a sweet roll, or a shower of 50 gold coins, along with a pile of ash. Transforming the target into a sweet roll or gold coins usually terminates the target. However, if the Wabbajack is used to transform a target into an animal, it only delays the fight, as they often transform back a short time later with full health. Using it on the same target will return them to their true form, where the fight can continue as normal. This thing is insane in every way, so use it at your own peril or amusement. But with that, let's get into the final Daedric quest. Our last Daedric quest will be for Vaermina, given our proclivity for alphabetized ordering, and I think it's a good one to end on. We'll begin in Dawnstar. We'll head inside the inn to find Ergnir saying it's a curse, and she's got to get out of town. Fruki tells her to get a hold of herself, and that they're just dreams. She pleads with Erandir for support, and he says they're just dreams, and he assures her it is quite normal. Ergnir retorts that it's the same dream over and over, saying it's evil. Fruki says she has a point, as they must be an omen. Erandir says he's doing what he can to end these nightmares, and for the townsfolk to put their trust in Lady Mora. We'll talk to Erandir about what's wrong with everyone, and he says the town is plagued by horrible nightmares. They're in serious danger, and he's afraid there's little he can do about it. We'll tell him to leave, as this isn't his problem. He says he shouldn't turn his back on these people when their lives could be at stake. He goes on to say the dreams are not just visions, they're a footprint left by the Daedric Lord Vaermina as she drains these people of their memories. We'll ask what his plan is, and he says he needs to return to the source of the problem, Nightcaller Temple. Then he suggests we assist him, and we mention he said return, as if he's been there. He says he's already said too much, and if anyone overhears what we're saying, it could start a panic. He would simply ask that we trust him and help him end Dawnstar's nightmares. We'll trust him, and he says Nightcaller Temple is only a short walk from here, and we must hurry. Before we go, we can ask who Vaermina is. Erandir says she resides in a strange realm known as Quagmire, a nightmarish land where reality shifts upon itself in seemingly impossible ways. From her citadel at the center, she reaches forth to collect our memories, leaving nothing in return apart from visions of horror and despair. We'll ask what she does with the memories, and Erandir says who can say. Perhaps she collects them for display, like works of art. Whatever the case may be, her intentions are far from benevolent. Now we'll run up to Nightcaller Temple. We'll follow Erandir as he leads us up there. This is annoying, as his speed is inconsistent and he will stop when we get too far away from him. On the way, he says it feels good to finally have a chance to help the people of Dawnstar. He'll tell us the tower on the hill is our destination. People around here call it the Tower of the Dawn. He's not familiar with the tower's history, but it was deserted for quite a long time before Nightcaller Temple was established inside. When the temple was active, the priests would rarely be seen in Dawnstar. They preferred to live a solitary existence. The temple's been abandoned for decades now. He calls it ironic, a ruin within a ruin. Erandir says there's a small shrine to Mora he established in the tower's entry hall, and he was hoping to seek spiritual guidance from her. We'll reach the temple and kill some trolls lingering outside. Then we'll talk to Erandir, and he warns us about the dangers within. The temple was raided years ago by an orc war party seeking revenge, as they were plagued with nightmares just like the people of Dawnstar. We'll learn the orcs weren't successful, as the priests released what they called the miasma, putting both the priests and orcs to sleep. We'll ask why it's dangerous if they're asleep, and he's concerned that when the place is unsealed, the miasma will dissipate and they'll awaken, both orc and priest alike. Arandir continues, saying the miasma was created by the priests for their rituals, and is a gas that places the affected in a deep sleep. Because the rituals would last for months or years, the miasma was designed to slow down the aging process. We'll ask if the gas is dangerous, and Arandir says it is. The longer the individual is exposed to it, the more the mind can become damaged. Those who've been under the effect of it for extended periods of time have been known to lose their minds entirely. In some cases, a few never wake up at all. Then we'll head inside, and Arandir will open a secret passage where we'll see the source of the nightmare. We'll look down to see the Skull of Corruption. We must reach the inner sanctum and destroy it. We'll head downstairs and blast a priest and orc before we encounter a magic wall. Arandir says the priest must have put up the barrier when the miasma was released. We'll mention it looks difficult to breach, and he says impossible actually. Then he suggests a way to bypass the barrier, but he needs to check their library and confirm it can be done. As you probably noticed, Arandir knows a lot about this place, and when we mention it, he says there's no point in concealing the truth any longer. We learn Arandir was a priest of Vaermina, and we say he should have told us the truth. He agrees, but didn't know what to say. When the orcs raided the temple, he fled, leaving his brothers and sisters behind to die. He spent the last few decades living in regret and seeking redemption from Mora, and by her benevolence, he will right his wrongs. He still has his key to the library, and whenever we're ready, we'll move on. We'll ask how the skull is affecting Dawnstar, and Arandir says the lore explains the Skull of Corruption holds a constant hunger for the memories of others. It's been out of touch for so long, he fears it's gained the ability to reach out on its own and try to feed. What it does with these memories is just conjecture and a source of arguments to this day. Then we'll follow Arandir to the library entrance, and he'll warn us we'll find more of the Awakened inside. We'll blow up more peeps, and once the room is cleared, Arandir says the library used to be filled with arcane volumes, but now almost everything's been burnt. Talking to Arandir, he'll point us to find a book of alchemical recipes called The Dream Stride. It bears the likeness of Vaermina on the cover, and should be here somewhere. We'll find the Dream Stride on the upper level and give it to Arandir. He says there is a way past the barrier, using a liquid known as Vaermina's torpor. It grants an ability to use dreams to travel distances in the real world. We'll say it's amazing, and he says he has yet to see it function in person. We'll be the first test subject, and Arandir says as a sworn priest of Mora, the elixir won't work for him. The torpor will only work for priests of Vaermina, or the unaffiliated. We'll ask where we can find the torpor, and we're pointed to the laboratory in the east wing. We'll ask what the Dream Stride will feel like, and he says we'll be viewing the memory of another through our own eyes and with our own body. Those around us will perceive us as normal, and we will find the words we utter may not be our own. He says thanks to all these odd principles, there is quite a lot of debate as to whether this is really a dream, or just the machinations of Vaermina. We'll ask how we'll know when to awaken, and Arandir will watch over us as we slumber. If he deduces anything is amiss, he will use his arts to bring us back. Otherwise, he is uncertain what will end our dream stride. Perhaps it's when Vaermina's curious appetite has been filled. We'll then head for the lab to find the torpor, and we'll be told to look for a small bottle, very similar to a potion. Then he says it's a tall bottle with dark liquid. Which is it? Anyway, we'll find it on the lower level and bring it back to Arandir. He's relieved we discovered a bottle intact, and says he's taken us this far, but we need to guide us the rest of the way. He says to drink it now, as Dawnstar's fate rests in the bottle. The longer we wait, the more damage Vaermina could be doing to the town. Then we'll down the bottle. We'll immediately appear deeper in the temple and witness two priests, Thorek and Varen, saying the orcs have breached the inner sanctum, and they can't allow the skull to fall into their hands. But no more of a handful of them remain. Varen will say they have no choice, and the miasma must be released. We'll be talked to as Casimir, and be asked to serve the will of Vaermina. We've made our peace, so we'll be told to activate the barrier and release the miasma. Velen and Thorek will stay to guard the skull. We'll run past priests fighting orcs on our way to the barrier. This can be an issue as they can get in the way in small hallways. Then we'll pull a chain to release the miasma. Then we'll appear on the other side of the barrier, and it depletes, allowing Arandir to join us. He'll explain that we vanished after drinking the torpor and materialized on the other side. He's never seen anything quite like it. We'll say it was remarkable, and Arandir says he envies us. He can only imagine the excitement of seeing history through the eyes of another. Sadly, he's resigned to just reading of its wonders through his research of the skull. We'll discuss it later and head deeper into the temple. We'll blast through several priests and orcs before reaching the final area. We'll be confronted by the two priests we saw earlier. We'll learn Casimir is Arandir, with Varen calling him a traitor as he left them to die and ran before the miasma took him. Arandir admits he was scared and didn't want to sleep, and we'll get into a fight. We'll slay the priests and we'll speak to Arandir. He'll say Varen and Thoric were his friends, and questions if it's punishment for his past. Then we reach a branching path where we can destroy the skull or claim it. We will be contacted by Vaermina as Erandir begins a ritual to destroy the skull. She says he is deceiving us, and when the ritual is complete, the skull will be free, and then Erandir will turn on us. She says to kill him quickly to claim the skull for our own, but we resist. Erandir will destroy the skull, and we'll talk to him. He says this temple has taken its toll on him. We'll ask if he'll be alright, and he says, in time, he believes he will. He reminds us of the shrine of Mora he constructed when we first entered, and says his intention was to spend the rest of his years burying the past and praying for forgiveness. But instead, he wishes to offer us his services, and he can become a follower. Then we'll reload to get the skull so we can get the Oblivion Walker achievement to obtain 15 Daedric items. We'll kill Erandir and grab the skull. It works as a staff, and does 20 points of damage, and increases to 50 if powered with dreams collected from sleeping NPCs. And with that, we've completed all the Daedric quests. Long live Oblivion Walkers and Daedric Stalkers. With the Daedric quest completed, we'll be moving on to the next major quest line, this time in the DLC. We'll be tackling different things in different videos, so stay tuned for more. There will be a link to my game commentary playlist in the description, so keep an eye on that if you want to watch my other stuff, or if you want to find where all the Skyrim videos will be. It won't take me too long to make each video, and I should be able to tackle each one quickly, but the next one might take a while. I will mention again that this was more of a walkthrough with critical commentary as opposed to a full analytical breakdown or critique, but that is coming in the final video of this series. Keep that in mind and hold on. I know it's taking a while to get there. Consider each of these a setup to the analysis payoff. For now, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and God bless.